Welcome back to the Witch of Loop and Hollow YouTube channel. I'm Tanae, the Witch of Loop and Hollow, and I'll be your host. So today we're talking about getting started with shadow work. October is very much the shadow season. We're approaching Scorpio season. We're really exploring our inner witches. It's really the most magical time of year. We say that Samhain, which is Halloween, October 31st, is the most magical day of the year because it's when the veil between worlds is thinnest. So the spirits can cross from their world into our world and they can walk among us, which is why we dress up on Halloween so that the spirits can walk among us without being afraid because they're not going to be spotted. What does that have to do with shadow work, and what even is shadow work? So shadow work is the process of really diving into your own thoughts, your actions, your motivations. It's about self-reflection, really. And it's about taking the things that have held you back, taking the things that you're afraid of, taking things like fear and doubt and anxiety, all of those things that come up for us as humans, right? And transmuting them. So, we all have trauma, we all have things we're afraid of, we all have things we've been conditioned to believe, even if we know they're wrong. We all have limiting beliefs about ourselves and about what we can achieve. And so shadow work is the process of going through all of those things, facing them one-on-one, and coming to understand them, coming to a place where you're no longer afraid of them. Even if they're still there in the back of your head, you've transmuted them into a power instead of a weakness. You've transmuted them into a strength. So how do you do this mystical thing, right? The biggest part of shadow work is self-reflection and journaling. So journaling might sound hokey to you if you haven't really done a lot of it, but it is pretty much the single most powerful thing that we can do for ourselves, because often we have thoughts bouncing around in our heads and we don't even realize that we're thinking the same thoughts over and over and over again. And so when you take the time to write those thoughts down, you're giving them a place to go. You're taking them out of your head and you're putting them somewhere else. And even if you revisit them, even if it pops in your head, a couple of days later, even if you go and reread that entry in your journal, it has a home. It has a box that you've put it in. When I was a kid, my mom always used to say, when I was in a bad mood or I was upset about something, she would say we've got to box it up and mail it away. We've got to send it off. And that's so true because, when we consciously take something out of our heads and we put it somewhere safe that it can live, that is not in our heads, we're giving ourselves space to think about other things. We're giving ourselves space to feel other things because we're only capable of feeling so many things at once. And so if we're all tied up with anxiety or fear or doubt or worry about something, then we don't have room for all of the other potential things we could feel. Some people would say that, write it in a journal so you can go back and read it. Some people would say, write it on a piece of paper and burn it, let it go. Whatever it is that gives you room in your head is the first step of shadow work. So, taking the thoughts, acknowledging them, thinking about them kind of critically, saying why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? Where is this coming from? That's incredibly powerful because that's when we're starting to do the self-reflection work that is basically what makes us human. This is something that only gods and humans can do, is think about our own thoughts and think about our own actions. Think about why we are doing something. The natural world has immense power, in some ways far beyond our own, but we are the only beings that get to think critically about why we did something. And so when we don't take advantage of that power, we're basically dismissing our birthright, right? Your cosmic birthright is self-reflection, is being able to think about why and ask yourself why. And so I have a few different, journaling strategies in my own life, but I think my favorite for shadow work is saying, okay, I feel this thing, that I think is negative, that I feel badly, that I feel this way. Why do I feel it's bad? Where does that conditioning come from? Why do I feel that this is something other people shouldn't be allowed to feel? Why do I feel this is something I shouldn't be allowed to feel? Why do I feel that this has a negative impact on the world? When we start to actually ask ourselves those questions, either we get a very clear answer and it's something new to explore within ourselves, Or we don't get a clear answer at all and we realize that we don't have a reason for feeling this way. We've just been conditioned to feel this way. Someone somewhere along the line told us that this was not okay. And so, there's sort of two sides of shadows. There's things that you feel because you've been conditioned, and then there's things you feel because of your own experience. That's sort of the trauma shadow work, where you're really processing trauma and you're allowing yourself to feel whatever it is that you feel. So shadow work is really that process of getting deep with yourself. It's about really examining what your motivation is. It's examining the why of everything you feel. And then it's letting it go. Because this is the thing, you can get stuck in shadow work mode, okay? So pro tip, don't try to do it all the time. That's one of the reasons I think why October is such a powerful month, is because this is the time when doing this kind of work is most powerful. It's when it's most potent. It's when we can kind of get deepest with ourselves, and it's when we have the deepest access to our intuition, to the spirit realm, to, whatever it is that you believe in that has influence on you. It's when we have the greatest access to those things. But if we're trying to do shadow work all the time, 24/7, you're constantly trying to face your fears, that gets draining, that gets exhausting. And so we're really not built as humans to be able to do this all the time. We are built to be able to do it, and that's powerful. That's magic right there. But we're not built to be able to face trauma constantly. That is actually something that releases stress in our bodies. So you have to be able to find the balance for yourself, find the balance of facing your fears and of letting them be sometimes, of not being hard on yourself. Shadow work is not about sort of getting in there and forcing yourself to change or forcing yourself to feel things. It's about allowing yourself to be open to letting things go. It's about release. It should be a relief when you achieve transmutation of a particular shadow and you finally let something go that's been weighing on you. That should be a breath of relief, not a feeling of, okay, now what's next? Sometimes things do come up because we let go of something else, but it should be a process of grace. You have to be gentle with yourself. You have to forgive yourself for your shadows first and foremost. And then you have to forgive yourself for not being able to let all of them go at once. My biggest advice for getting started with shadow work is, number one, put it down on paper or, let your thoughts out in some way. Number two, ask yourself why, ask yourself why you feel something. Ask yourself, where it's coming from. Ask yourself if it's an internal or external shadow. Is it a fear you feel because of something inside of you, or is it a fear you feel because someone told you should be afraid of it? And number three, be gentle with yourself. Don't try to do shadow work all the time. Harness this powerful energy of October and of Samhain, of Scorpio, to get deep with yourself, but don't make yourself feel guilty for not being able to get deep all the time, because we are built to experience joy. We're built to experience love. And if we're constantly worrying about our shadows, we don't really have space for those things. So we do the shadow work to make space for them. But if you're trying to do shadow work all the time, that becomes in and of itself its own shadow. So, I encourage you to explore shadow work, to work on getting deep with yourself, and to leave space for some joy too. So drop a comment below. Tell me about your experiences with shadow work. Make sure you follow this channel so that you can be notified whenever I put out a new video. All right, see you next time.